tonight we welcome Dr. Joe Purpura. He's an obstetrician, gynecologist, patient safety expert, and award-winning faculty member at Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine. That is a mouthful. I heard it's a pretty good school too.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's right up there, I think, with the best in the country.
Great. And right now you live in Santa Barbara. How many years have you lived in Santa Barbara?
12.
12 years. And what are you doing now as far as?
I work for a biotech company now. It's sort of a long story, but I had a shoulder injury and I had to, slowly retire from practice, and I got a master's degree in patient safety, and I got recruited into a medical device company in Chicago. And that was in 2007, I think. And then a friend of mine called me and said, hey, we really need something that you can deliver to our company out here in Santa Barbara. Come out and interview. And that was in February, going from Chicago to Santa Barbara. I came out here, it was 72 and sunny, and I should have interviewed out here like 30 years ago. And then that's how I ended up out here, and I've been here ever since and love it.
Wow. And then you found time to write a book, and I should ask your wife, Nancy, does this guy ever sleep?
Yes, he does sleep. But
He does sleep.
He's spent a long time writing this book.
Yeah,
That's
when you're practicing obstetrics, there's a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
Sitting around waiting for people to deliver babies, and when you've seen all the old movies that they run on TV, then you start asking yourself, maybe I should start making some notes and put them together, and you end up with a stack of legal pads with notes, and I just decided I'm going to compile it all and make something out of it and see where it goes.
Wow, that's interesting. It obviously worked because one of your blurbs said, an exquisitely developed and propulsive novel that delivers high tension, humor, and magnetic characters in equal measure. Code Christ is not only an addictive read, it shines with authenticity of the author's insights into medicine, criminality, and the emotions that make us human. The person that penned that was ultimate bestseller in our local treasure, T.C. Boyle.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's saying a lot. So congratulations on your book.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just elated when I asked him. I said, "Would you read this and give me your thoughts?" And he said, "Oh yeah, this is good. Keep going." So yeah, I owe a lot to TC for his guidance and his inspiration.
Something that people may not be aware of. I know for a fact that T.C. Boyle hates to write blurbs. And the fact he gets asked so many times, but the fact that he did it for Dr. Joe's here says a lot about what he saw in this book.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he hates to write them, so maybe the red wine that we've shared together sitting in a bar helped along the way. I know we end up talking and go off on a million tangents, and we sort of entertain each other.
Yeah.
So, which he's a dear friend.
So tell me about your writing process and how long it took you to write from idea to finished product.
It was in segments, I think, but once I got the main conceit of the book and where I wanted to go with it, and the three main acts of it, as it were, it happened fairly quickly. I mean, I sat down and it just flowed, and you end up with a terrible first draft in probably less than a year, and then the real work begins. Then you get someone who knows what they're doing to read it and guide you, and that's where I gave acknowledgments to my editors. They were fabulous, and I learned a lot from them. So I think the thinking about it took years, but then the doing of it was probably 10 months.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it easy for you?
It was easy. It's just something that came naturally, and you know, it's I guess it's sort of cheap psychotherapy in a way, just to let everything out, and then you have, of course, you have to clean it up, and you know, and all that. But it was just, I'd open my laptop and I'd just take a deep breath and relax, and I was in a different world.
Was it? I'm sure it was an appealing, as opposed to what you do in your profession in the medical field. It was a nice balance for you, wasn't it?
It was a nice balance, and yeah, you know, I mean, I'm kidding about cheap psychotherapy, but
Yeah.
it was very relaxing, and rewarding, and you know, it's fiction, so it's fantasy. You can go anywhere you want to go
Yeah.
with something like that.
But it also, what I like, you know, I just started reading it, but it has a good local element. It starts in Santa Barbara with a panga boat, finding a panga
Yeah.
boat in there, and so
It's
Santa
totally
Barbara
set in
Citrus,
Santa Barbara and
Yeah.
Montecito. Yeah.
and as opposed to Chicago, why did you pick? I mean, you live places.
Well, I think because I came out here and I just fell in love with you know, with the area, with the topography and the nature, and I think that was part of the inspiration for making me sit down and write. You know, I know that sounds corny, but it's true. It was, you know, I've always loved coming out here to visit, and then living here was really an experience.
So if you can tell everybody just a brief synopsis of what Code Crisis is about, that'd be great.
I guess briefly, it's about a doctor who stumbles into a terrorism plot and becomes this reluctant hero to follow leads, and then you know, like any good hero, he teams up with a sidekick that's from the FBI, and then he's torn with, you know, ruining his career in medicine versus doing something that could save the country, and then it just unfolds from there. So I don't want to. I know you didn't read the whole thing. I don't want to spoil
please
anything
don't.
for you. No, I'm only kidding. But that's basically the synopsis.
Where did you get an idea like that? What were your influences?
I think reading, you know, the first few thrillers that I read, you know, in earnest, really made me think, hey, I love this genre. I see how things work, and I also saw how some things didn't work. And, you know, I mean, all the authors, I've been through them. And Nelson DeMille was someone that I really admired, his style and what his books ended up being.
What appealed to you about DeMille's?
I just think, I don't know, you can relate to every character in the book. You know everyone in there. You know, you've seen that person, or that person's a friend of yours, or an enemy of yours.
Speaking of which, Vince DeLuca sounds a lot like Joe Purpura.
No.
And there isn't, is he not? He is a physician as well.
Yeah.
Did you see a little bit of yourself in the main character?
Every book is an autobiography of sorts, right? I mean, anyone that tells you that it isn't, I don't think they're being genuine. But yeah, I think now obviously there's extremes in there, and there's hyperbole, but yeah, a lot of my personal experiences are in that character. And yeah, and I think the female protagonist, Carolyn, that's sort of a, you know, she's a conglomerate of every person I've known.
Were there any other characters that you culled from real life?
Not really. I mean, maybe bits and pieces, but nothing that I want to admit to, because I don't want any lawsuits.
Oh, smart.
But, yeah,
This is on
I'm
YouTube.
exaggerating, but
Yeah.
you know, it's, I don't know, people stick with you, you know, you meet them, and even if it's a brief encounter on an airplane or something like that, you remember things about people.
Airplanes were big in the writing of this. But
Yeah. You know, I was always fascinated with aviation from the start. My dad would take me to the airport, you know, just to watch planes when I was, you know, a little more than a toddler.
Yeah.
And it's been a fascination. And I think there's, let's face it, there's fear in flying for most people, whether they admit it or not. But I think that kind of set the tone for me a little bit.
Yeah. What about your influences early? I mean, did you, when you were young, were there, you know, movies, television, literature, anything that really influenced you?
You know, I think all the growing up, I think on television, it was, you know, I love Twilight Zone. I love the you know, the mysterious parts of that, and I really took a liking to Shakespeare in high school. That's where that started, and I carried that through in college. I almost got a minor in English. Great dramatic and great narrative literature really fascinated me, and then I think I just kept following that. And I think movies, of course, the James Bond movies, you know, were, I'm old enough when that was like, wow, this is really, you know, on the edge. Not so much nowadays. Now it's, you know, Dick Wolf, thank him for what he gives us, you know, but you can see that every Wednesday night now.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. You wrote this partially during COVID, right?
Yes, yeah, that helped.
And did it give you any kind of insight what was going on in the world, like the tension going on inside the world, and being able to equate that in your writing?
Well, you know, I never thought about it till you just mentioned it, but I think what COVID did was made me realize how fragile the balance of everything is and how it can change overnight. I think that probably carried through in some of my emotions in the book.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it also gave me time with nowhere to go and sit down and you know, write.
Yeah. Do you seem like you really enjoy actually the process of writing?
Yes, love it.
And what is your favorite part about that?
I think that my favorite part is just sitting down and just, you know, seat of the pants writing with a very, very thin outline and just see where it takes me. And then that means there's a lot of cleanup, you know, on the back end of that. But I love that first sort of free flight, you know, experience of writing.
A lot of authors talk about the characters taking over your story. Did they do that in Writing Code Crisis?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, well, obviously you're emotionally attached to all of them, and you sort of look out for them, and maybe to a fault, that could steer you in places that make the book less good. You know, so you have to sort of catch yourself. But I think that happens during the rewriting process.
Okay.
With the editing and revising.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want them to succeed. You want some people to fail.
Did the story go on its own sometimes, or?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Did you try to rein it back, or you just let it go?
You know, when I went after I had the first draft done, I went through and I'm like, what was I thinking? Where was that going?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, the first editor at my publisher said to me, you know, Joe, people don't have time to read anymore. This is way too long. I think it was like 90,000 words, the first draft. And I'm like, okay. And then that's tough, cutting stuff.
Yeah. How many pages?
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
even, I think it ended up being like 60,000 or
Yeah.
whatever the sweet spot for thriller was my
Really?
target.
There is a target for thriller then.
Yeah.
'Cause literature is usually about 90,000 or
Yeah.
so.
Well, that's what TC told me.
Interesting.
And he also pointed out his books don't have vampires and explosions and things
Yeah.
like that, like thrillers do. Not that I have vampires and, you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's more of an opus if you're writing his kind of stuff.
Did so he read it earlier than.
He probably read draft 4, I think.
Okay.
You know, out of 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he offered some feedback, and
He just basically said, "This is good. Keep writing."
that's great.
You know, and keep whatever you have to do, rewriting. So, yeah, I'm very grateful to him.
And obviously, you're going to keep writing because this is a really.
Yeah, I love it. I
Yeah.
do.
You know, it's for a virtual event we had Irish Yamashita, who is a screenwriter, wrote Letters from Iwo Jima, and she turned to novel writing, thriller writing, too, and she absolutely loves it. And
Yeah.
I don't think she'll ever go back. Is
Yeah.
that kind of the path that you see
infectious.
yourself?
Yeah.
Is that the path you see yourself?
Yes,
Getting
definitely.
away from. Interesting. Right on.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions right now, please?
I'm not surprised to hear you're influenced by James Bond movies. My experience of reading your book was there's a feeling when you walk out of a James Bond movie of like, I can do anything, and I'm, you know, the guys can shoot a machine gun at me for 10 minutes
Right.
and none of the bullets are going to hit me, and I'm going to,
Yeah.
I had that feeling from reading your book, and I really enjoy that kind of, I'm James Bond.
Well, that's the fun of writing too.
Yes.
You can do anything, go anywhere, make anything happen, solve any problem,
Yes.
create any problem. So it is
Well,
fun.
you never lost me. I mean, it's easy to,
Well,
I
thank
didn't
you.
have to suspend credulity too much. I really was carried along
Thank you.
into that, and so thank you for that. That was
Great.
the really fun about your
Well,
book.
thank you for that compliment.
That's great. Does anybody else have any other questions before we sign some books? So what's next?
Next is everyone says they love these characters, do a sequel, so I think that's what's coming up next. I just
Yeah.
have to think of what it's going to be about.
Yeah.
And they like the code crisis, so it's going to have to be code something. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But I think that it'll be the code something series.
Yeah. You go along the lines of Joe Ide.
Yeah.
Are you familiar?
Yeah.
Joe's a friend of mine, and he just started with a single standalone, and all of a sudden
Yeah,
they say, "Can you do 5 more of these?" After a while. So,
exactly.
well, keep writing, Joe.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thanks for the invitation. I've always loved this place, and I've spent many hours in here browsing and love everything about it.
You're more than welcome to come. Joe Purpura, thank you very much.
Thank you.